beautiful friends. It's Amanda here, and today I'm telling you about the best palettes of the year so far. We're about halfway through the year, and we've seen a lot of great eyeshadow palettes already. Many of these have already been thoroughly talked about, ranked, reviewed, swatched, tutorialized. You'll see most of these were ranked in the top tier of my monthly rankings. Also, typically have appeared in my monthly favorites videos, which I feel like are kind of tapering off in popularity. So maybe more of ranking and best of is the way to go for now. I don't know. You tell me, you're the viewers, but I want to show you my top 12 palettes so far. The first part of this video is going to be in chronological order. I don't have a ranking for these yet. I'm going to save that for the end of the year. First up, my very first favorite palette for the year so far. This one came out back in January. This one's from Nomad Cosmetics. It's the New Zealand Stargazing palette. Beautiful packaging. I love a celestial theme. If you don't already know that about me, you'll know soon. At the risk of repeating myself over and over again, I have a common sort of rubric that I'm using for my favorite palettes, and I like the same things about most of the palettes you're going to see in today's video. That's obviously a consistent, high performing formula. I prefer generally more pigmented shades versus something that's a little bit softer and more buildable. Personally, that's just my take, my style. I like really, really shimmery metallics. I tend to favor palettes that have a great balance between mattes and shimmers. It's not a must-have, but it is something that I look for and I prefer when there's an even split between mattes and shimmers. And I love details. I like luxurious packaging. I like these little printed powders. I like when the packaging matches the shades inside. I love a theme. So those are all factors that lead me to really loving and enjoying and using a palette. And the color story, it needs to make sense. It needs to be cohesive enough to create some looks, but not so cohesive that the shades are repetitive. I like a special shadow. As you can see here, there are some beautiful duochrome and multichrome shades in here. But really, I want something that's going to perform well, feel like I got a good value for my dollar. And I like all kinds of colors. So you're going to see a wide range of color stories represented here. Warm tones, cool tones, monochromatic, variety of colors, everything from brights to muted to neutrals. I really like a little bit of everything, especially when there is pretty packaging, an awesome theme. Look, I love Twilight, especially the movies. If you watched my review on this collection, then you already know I have some complicated and often intense feelings about Twilight films. I am surprised by how much blue is showing up in the palettes with this mid-year check-in. A lot of these palettes have some prominent blue features, so I was really interested to see how much that has become a part of my eyeshadow repertoire over the past year. I'm also surprised to say that this Twilight palette is the only ColourPop palette that I'm featuring so far as a favorite. Now, there are only 12 eyeshadow palettes in today's video, but for only one ColourPop palette to make the top 12 halfway through the year, it's a little interesting. Although I do think that the second half of the year will have a lot of potential. It seems like they've been switching up their strategy, releasing fewer, better, or more curated things. So I have hope. And I also wanted to point out you're seeing some lighting changes. I am going to show you each one of these palettes in my full studio light, then with just the regular overhead light bulb, like what you're seeing now. And then I'll also show you the palette in the dark with flash. Mostly, I just want to give you a really well-rounded view of these palettes. One thing that I hear a lot, because I do post a lot of photos on Instagram of products and swatches, one thing that I hear a lot on those posts is, wow, this looks different in every picture, or I don't know what to think about this because it looks so different on the website. And a lot of that is just lighting, camera settings. Oftentimes, things that you see on websites are super edited. Those are studio photography, and then they are super edited, mostly so that they can just look really clean and perfect in that e-commerce, website setting, but it does sometimes lend to overexposure. So I want to show you what these palettes look like in hand in a bunch of different lighting settings. I do that a lot in my review videos too, especially if there are a lot of special shades, duochromes, multichromes. I'll show you the swatches in different lighting situations because I think that it's, just better for you to get an idea of what do these really look like? What is this going to look like if you decide to order this and you have it in your hands? And also, I think it's good just from a customer point of view to understand, why do things look different in different pictures? Why do they look different on different people? And as you get a greater understanding for really how these products are showcased and photographed, it's going to make a better experience for everyone. And I think you're going to feel better about what you spend your money on just as a more informed consumer. Ooh, okay. I know I just talked over the entire Lovesick palette. I love this little palette. It's so cute. And I'm happy to say that they did restock this one. It sold out pretty quickly when it first launched, but it is back. So go check out the Lovesick palette if you wanted to get your hands on that one, because I think this is one of the better curated small palettes of the year so far. And a sort of similar color story in my mind, it's this really mauve romantic color story, is the Mellow Grove palette. These two actually work really beautifully together for some soft, romantic, kind of springy, very girly pop type of vibes, where the Lovesick palette leaned into purple as the pop of color. The Mellow Grove palette is leaning more into green as the pop of color, but I love the way that these two work together, especially because there's not a lot of overlap shade-wise, even though they're in such a similar color story. They are very different packaging wise. The vibes are really different. Mellow Grove is a lot more moody and kind of magical witch in the woods, whereas Lovesick is really cutesy and cartoony. I love both. I'm definitely drawn towards both of those directions, but I know not everybody is. It's just sort of what you're interested in. I'm kind of interested in everything, so I'm sure that will be exceedingly obvious from my favorites that you'll see in today's video, and also just in general on my channel. I am just here to have fun and enjoy my shiny, pretty, colorful dirt in its shiny, pretty, colorful little boxes. At the end of the day, that's really what we're doing here. All right. Let's refocus. Let's get back to business. We can talk about one of my favorite collaborations of the year so far. There will be another collab palette later in the ranking, but this one is the Amy Loves palette from Adept Cosmetics. And Amy is one of my friends, definitely one of my closest friends. So, take my review with a grain of salt. But this palette is so beautiful. It is very shimmer heavy. I find myself pulling in a couple more mattes, but these shimmers are so beautiful that I don't even mind. I don't even care. We have a ton of gorgeous, shifty, super metallic shades. The mattes that are in here are really buttery, easy to work with, definitely pigmented, but not super crumbly. They are just silky smooth and easy to blend. I love the way that this entire palette transforms in different lighting. The overhead lighting here, it's even more beautiful somehow without all of the studio lights. You can really see some of that shimmer and shift coming through. And then when you see this palette with flash, it's just a totally different experience. That shade Indie is so mesmerizing. You know me, I could stare at sparkly, shiny eyeshadow forever, but this palette will take you one step further because even the outer packaging is so beautiful in the flash. I had to show it to you because the way that all of these little glitters reflect it's just so magical. I love it. This is such a great palette. I'm excited for my friend, but I'm also excited for me because I get to wear this eyeshadow. Now, let's talk about the only all neutral palette that is in my lineup so far. This is one of the Nomad Air travel palettes. This is the Oslo palette. This has a collection of really super neutral and cool toned neutral shades. True neutrals are hard to come by, and the shade Natural is just a perfectly neutral shade for me. I find myself reaching for that one all the time. And this has been such a great little travel palette. I really do use it that way. I have a travel makeup bag that I put in my carry-on or I throw in my backpack for road trips if I'm going to do my makeup in the car. And this is just such an easy little staple neutral palette. I can see just about anybody using and enjoying this one. Also, I'm a sucker for silvers. I don't know if you've noticed that, but a lot of my favorite palettes also include some shimmery metallic silver shades. It's one of my favorite one and done or two shadow look type of shadows because I just think it's easy and flattering and it's shiny and pretty and I love shiny things. I feel like we've well established that at this point. So we have Nomad Cosmetics making two appearances on the best palettes of the year so far list. The next palette that we're going to look at is Lethal Cosmetics' second appearance on the list as well. And then we will have one more brand that hasn't even been featured yet that will also have two palettes on the list. So make your guesses now and don't cheat, okay? Don't skip ahead. Don't go check the description box. I bet you already know what it is. I'm sure you do. This is the Avatar The Last Airbender Earth palette. Now, I enjoyed all of the palettes from this Avatar collection. I thought that they were all well curated, interesting, high quality. Lethal Shadows are incredibly consistent for me. And I think that as far as shade curation goes, Lethal does just a good job of doing something interesting and different but still really useful and enjoyable and even beginner friendly, dare I say. Whereas a lot of indies, when they have a more out of the box color story, I think it can be a little bit intimidating for people to come up with color combos that they actually want to use and wear. And I think Lethal just hits a great balance for all of those factors. Based on their releases so far in 2024, I wouldn't be surprised if they bring out another contender for my personal favorites for this year. I don't know what they have in store for us. I'm sure we'll see at least another one or two palettes released in 2024. So I'm hoping for another banger. I loved their palette that they released at the end of the year last year, the Midnight Serenade palette. It ended up being one of my top favorites from 2023, and it's one that I still reach for a lot because I just always know I'm going to get good looks from it, and I like to travel with that one. So I have a feeling we could see another contender, at least for my personal list. Now, those are all of the palettes that were in the top of the rankings for my monthly rankings so far this year. I obviously haven't done a July ranking yet, but I will tell you this next palette that we're going to see is one that will be in the top tier of my July ranking. I know it feels early to say that because I just released the review for this Moonwish palette from Odin's Eye on July 1st, but Odin's Eye is really good about sending their PR packages out very early. So I already have a lot of time to test, to make content, to do swatches, to wear things before my initial review is even released on reveal day, which is incredibly helpful for me from a content creation standpoint, but I think it's also really helpful for viewers who are watching those reviews because it's not a first impression, at least on my end. And I know a lot of my creator friends are really testing and using things beforehand too, because we want to have a good opinion. We want to have a useful review. And I know that this Moonwish palette is going to be on the top of my July ranking because it hits all the marks. Celestial theming, some neutrals, some colorful shades, half matte, half shimmers, really, really bright metallics. Look, you put enough purple in a palette, and this is a very purple heavy palette, I'm probably gonna just automatically love it. Plus, I love the Odin's Eye formulas. Across the board, their mattes and shimmers stay on the top of my personal favorites performance-wise. I don't think that's a surprise. I did a collaboration palette with Odin's Eye, so it's probably pretty obvious that I love the brand and I think a lot of their formulas, their performance, their packaging, everything's just always on point. I always look forward to their releases, and Moonwish just went straight to the top of the list for me. I love it. I can't stop wearing it. All right, we have a few more palettes to talk about, and now we're going outside of just the top ranked for the month. And we're going to talk about four palettes that were not in the top tier of my monthly rankings for one reason or another. First of all, these are two palettes that I previously reviewed earlier in the year that I think deserve more hype. I always say in my monthly rankings that anything has the ability to change ranking, either move up or be demoted. And these are two that I personally would now, after using them more, after just more time, I would definitely put in the top tier of the ranking. So for this Earthwood palette, it was part of a larger collection. And at the time that this whole Legendary Diversa collection came out, I just hadn't had enough time to wear and use all of the products from all of the collaborators. So I didn't even put it in my monthly ranking. It wouldn't have been a good ranking. It wouldn't have been a well-informed ranking. But after taking the time to use everything, I can't stop going back to this palette. Like I've said before, I love the Odin's Eye formula. I think all of the palettes performed beautifully and were beautifully packaged, and I liked them. They worked well for me, but this is the one that had the colors that I just kept reaching for. I love the mix of neutrals and colorful shades in here. I love the rich greens. I love these light little cute purples. I love the neutrals in here. I use them all the time for just a quick little brown neutral look. I feel like I didn't have the chance, the ability to give this the hype that it deserved. And now I'm here to hype it up. The Earthwood palette has been such a stable go-to for me for so long. I took it with me on a trip recently, and I just think that it's really great. It deserves more hype. It's my fault I didn't hype it enough at the time. And, I'm gonna make up for it now. Another one that I have, I think, shifted my perspective on, just because for me, this ranked really high in its monthly ranking, but it wasn't the top palette of the month, mostly because it's so blue heavy. This Cradled in Ice palette from Fantasy Cosmetica was also ranked in the same month as the Amy Loves palette, the new Odin's Eye singles that came out, and the Nomad Air travel palettes. So a lot of eyeshadows that I ranked really highly just ended up landing above this one because this one has those matte blues that I'm just not drawn towards. I don't tend to wear very often, and I feel like I don't wear them very well either. But truly because so many other palettes that I really, really, really loved came out around the same time, the deck was sort of stacked against this Cradle to Nice palette. And I gotta say, the majority of this is something that I really love. Aside basically from the two lightest matte blue shades, I like the dark navy shade. I love all of the pinky and mauvey colors. The shimmers in here are unreal. I know I've said it a million times, but these really shifty, silvery type of shimmers are just my favorites. I also love seeing Fantasy Cosmetica do a 12 pan palette. They have done all 9 pans and singles up until this point, and 12 pans is my personal sweet spot as far as an eyeshadow palette goes. So I just really dropped the ball on hyping this up and giving this a better chance because I really like this palette. I think it's great. I kind of did it a disservice. So, again, just like the Earthwood palette, I am here to correct my misstep and give the Cradle to Nice palette the hype that it deserves. The last two palettes I'm going to talk about, I'm calling these my rookie contenders. These are palettes that I just haven't used enough yet to really call them favorites, but I think that they have the capacity. The Unearthly Spring Magic palette, this one was sent to me in PR. It came kind of later after its release, and then it definitely spent some time hanging out in my box of shame before I actually used it. And I should have used it sooner because this is so pretty. I really like it. I don't think that this is just a spring color story. I think this can be used really year round. I mean, any color, you can wear whatever you want whenever you want. I think we're over those arbitrary seasonal rules as law. Of course, you may gravitate more towards one thing in a certain season, especially depending on what you're wearing, like clothing wise. But I think this is a great all around palette. I like the balance of shades. I like the mix of colors and neutrals. It's the same old story. It's got half matte, half shimmer. It's got a cute theme. The quality is there. I can see myself really falling head over heels for this palette if I give myself the chance to use it more. But the couple of times that I have used it, I've loved it. I've loved the looks that I came out with. So I really want to give this sort of an honorable mention because I think that this little Spring Magic palette has some serious potential to make the best of the year list by the time December rolls around. But I need to give it some more time. As the kids say, I need to let them cook. And the final palette I'm going to talk about, I just received this maybe a week ago, but I can already tell that this is a contender. This is coming in as the new kid on the block in this ranking, but this palette is so pretty. This is the Longing palette from Blend Bunny Cosmetics. This just packaging, the shades, I love their formulas. My biggest gripe here is that it's just so matte heavy, and I think that's sort of the vibe of this palette. I'm trying to meet this whole longing palette theme, everything where it is. And I think that matte shades really do fit this wistful, lost romance type of vibe. I get it, but I still am a shimmery, shiny sparkle girl. Deep down in my heart, my soul, my eyelids just want to be shiny. So that's my main reservation, I guess you could say, is I wish even if there was like two more shimmers, I could be down with that. But I think that I need to pair the Longing palette with my Amy Loves palette because that one is missing mattes for me and this one's missing shimmers. So they could just be the absolute perfect pairing. And I think that the Blend Bunny mattes do have that silky, buttery type of texture similar to the Adept mattes. So I actually just kind of thought of that just now as I was voicing over this video, and I am absolutely gonna start wearing these two together. I think that could be a perfect match, match made in heaven. That's it. That is palette number 12 of 12, and I would love to hear what you think about these palettes. Do you have any of the same favorites? Is there anything that you think needs to be on this list that I didn't mention? Perhaps I just haven't used it yet. I will have all of the corresponding videos for these palettes linked in the description box if you want to see things like comparisons, tutorials for eye looks, just more information in general. All of that will be linked down in the description box, and I'll also put any discount codes that I have, whether they are my own affiliate codes or if I don't have one for a brand, I'll look around and see if any of my friends and fellow creators have discount codes for you. That way you can get the best possible deal on these best possible palettes, at least in my opinion. I, of course, always want to hear what you think about things too, so make sure you leave all of your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. I love your face. Bye!